The wind cut like knives through the dry prairie dusk, whistling low through the crooked fence posts and forgotten wagon tracks, somewhere between the dying sun and the rising dust. A girl lay broken in the back of a buckboard wagon. Her dress was torn, wrists raw, lips cracked from days without water, and still, she whispered, voice barely a breath, "It was never supposed to end this way." Clara Granger was 22, and life had already stolen too much. Her mother buried when she was 15. Her stepfather, Jedediah Granger, took the land, the house, and finally tried to take her, not with kindness, not with any claim of love, just as a thing a man owns. And in this part of the frontier, no one questioned a man dragging a girl across state lines, so long as he paid for his whiskey and rode quiet. At the trading post, Jed spotted the rancher, tall, weathered, a man who'd lost too much to say much. Eli Hart, 50, maybe more, boots worn down from years riding fence lines, eyes like cold iron. Jed didn't ask for help, he ordered it. "Tie her," he spat, tossing a coil of rope into Eli's chest. "She's got running in her blood." Eli didn't move at first. "I said tie her, or I burn your goddamn barn tonight." A silence passed that felt like thunder. Eli looked at Clara, bruised, mouth trembling but defiant. Their eyes met. She didn't beg, didn't flinch. She just stared, steady, and something in Eli cracked like old timber in fire. He tied her wrists, slow, gentle, despite the cruelty of it. His fingers brushed her skin like an apology he couldn't speak. Clara whispered, "You don't have to do this." He didn't answer. Couldn't. Jed grinned like the devil behind a poker hand, hauling her back into the wagon. Wheels creaked, dust rose, and she was gone. Eli stood in the dirt long after they vanished, the rope still in his hands, frayed, warm. Somewhere deep in the prairie, storm was coming, and Eli Hart, man of silence, man of guilt, felt it in his bones. He would ride tonight, not for justice, for something older, something right. The desert didn't kill fast, it killed slow. Clara lay slumped beneath a crooked cottonwood, her arms bound behind her with the same rope Eli had tied. Her lips were bleeding, her skin cooked red by the sun. The wind swept through the canyon in hot, rattling bursts, carrying sand that bit into her face like broken glass. Jed had left her there like a busted canteen, useless, used, and half dead. "She don't need killin'," he'd laugh before riding off. "Just forgettin'." Now she sat against the tree like a shadow waiting to vanish. Her voice was gone, her tears had dried into dust. She tried to scream once, only air came. The sky spun, the light bent. She saw her mother standing barefoot in the wheat fields holding a red ribbon. Then the image vanished, just heat shimmer and vultures circling above. Her breathing slowed, time stretched like stretched leather. Then hooves, faint at first, then pounding. Clara blinked, her head lolling. A figure burst over the ridge, dark coat, wide hat, horse, breathing hard. Eli. He dismounted before the dust even settled, dropping to his knees beside her. "Clara, can you hear me?" Her lips moved, but no sound came. He untied her wrists with trembling hands, cursing himself under his breath. "I should have stopped him. Should have said no." She slumped into his arms like a broken wing. "Stay with me, girl. Don't you give in now." He lifted her, cradling her against his chest like she was something fragile and holy. His boots thudded against the cracked earth as he mounted up with her, one arm tight around her body, the other gripping the reins. The horse galloped hard across the fading sun. Every bounce threatened to break her again, but her head pressed against his shoulder, and for the first time in days her heartbeat wasn't alone. Hours passed like minutes. The sky turned black. A whisper came from her lips, dry and broken. "Why'd you help?" Eli didn't answer right away. The stars looked down, silent as ever. Then softly, "Because I remember what it felt like when no one came." And he rode on, toward the only place he had left. Home. Eli's cabin sat quiet beneath the pines, tucked deep where the land forgot men and their sins. The trail leading to it was nearly swallowed by brush, and the roof sagged under years of grief and snow. He hadn't opened that door in almost 3 winters, not since the fever took his wife and silence moved in. But tonight he kicked it open with mud-caked boots and carried Clara across the threshold like a man carrying regret. He laid her down on the old bed, his wife's bed, its quilt still smelling faintly of pine soap and lost time. Lantern light flickered across the wood-planked walls, catching on dust, old photographs, and a cross that hadn't felt prayed to in years. Clara shivered, unconscious, sweat beading across her forehead. Eli boiled water and tore strips from a clean undershirt. He wiped her face, cleaned the blood from her wrists, checked her pulse every few minutes. She moaned in her sleep, whimpering, twitching, calling out names he didn't know. Her mother, her brother, herself. Eli sat beside her until the fire died low. He didn't speak, just listened to the storm stirring inside her chest. By morning, her fever broke. Her eyes opened, slow, heavy. She saw the ceiling, the lantern, the man sitting slouched in the doorway with a rifle across his lap. "You're safe," Eli said. Clara blinked. "Where are we?" "Far enough to matter, not far enough for him to forget you." She tried to sit up, winced, and collapsed back. He stood, poured her a cup of water, held it to her lips. She drank slow. "Why'd you come?" Eli hesitated. "Because no one came for my wife, and I never forgave myself." A long silence stretched between them. The fire popped. "Is this your cabin?" she asked. It did. Was hers. Outside, wind rustled through the tall pines. Inside, something gentler stirred, an understanding not yet spoken, not yet trusted. That night, she woke to find him asleep upright in the chair, rifle still in hand, boots planted firm on the floor. She watched him for a long time, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like prey. She felt seen. Night came heavy, the kind that presses against your chest and carries the scent of rain and rot. Clara lay on the quilt, eyes tracing the shadows of the cabin walls. The fire crackled, throwing lantern light that danced like ghosts. For a moment she thought she might sleep. Then came the sound of hooves clattering against the rocky earth outside. She froze. Jed had returned. Through the window she saw him and 2 thugs, faces twisted under wide-brimmed hats. Torches flared against the darkness, casting their shadows long and monstrous. Jed's laugh rolled across the clearing. "You've got my girl, Hart. Hand her over." Eli stepped into the doorway, rifle in hand. The light caught the lines of his face, the quiet rage in his eyes. "You won't take her," he said simply. Jed's smirk split his face. "Oh, I'll take what's mine. Law don't matter here, and neither does your life." Clara's heart thumped in her chest like a drum of war. She wanted to run, to scream, to throw herself into Eli's arms, but the rope of fear held her still. Eli didn't flinch. His stance was firm, grounded, a man carved from the desert itself. Jed cursed and spat into the dust. 2 days, Hart, 2 days. Then we come back, and we don't knock." He and his men disappeared into the night, torches flickering like dying eyes. Clara sagged against the wall, trembling, exhausted. Eli moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let him scare you," he said. "A man don't run when the devil comes. He builds a wall of fire and makes the devil walk through it." Her voice barely came above a whisper. "We can't fight him. Not like this." "You'll fight," he replied, "and you'll survive. Because running now would make you less than you are. You're stronger than he knows. Stronger than I even knew." For hours they worked in silence, boarding up windows, hiding supplies, checking the locks on every door. Clara held Eli's late wife's boots, trying them on, feeling something shift inside. A tiny spark of courage, a flicker that said she might survive this night and the ones to come. Outside, the wind moaned through the pines. Inside, the cabin held its breath, bracing for the storm Jed would bring. And for the first time, Clara realized she was no longer entirely alone. The morning was pale and still, the kind of light that made the desert look endless and unforgiving. Clara stirred, her body stiff and sore, but her mind sharper than it had been in days. She peeked through the cracks in the boarded windows and saw a rider approaching, boots hitting the dirt like a steady drumbeat of hope. Sheriff Amos Colton. Tall, gray-streaked, and carrying the weight of years in the wrinkles of his face, the sheriff dismounted with a quiet authority that made the wind itself seem to pause. His eyes swept the cabin, then softened when they landed on Clara. "You Hart?" he asked. Eli nodded, rifle resting against his shoulder, hands dust-stained. "Yes, sir." The sheriff stepped closer, boots crunching on the cabin floor. He looked at Clara, saw the bruises, the fear etched into her posture, and didn't flinch. "Kidnapped?" Clara swallowed hard. "Jed Granger. He took me. Sold my land, threatened everything. Her voice cracked, and she swallowed tears. "I barely made it." Sheriff Amos listened, face unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "Truth don't matter much if it ain't got paperwork, but your story is enough to start." Eli's jaw tightened. "He'll be back." The sheriff's eyes were hard, cold steel now. "If he comes back, you send a signal. Lantern in the tower. I'll ride like hell. Until then you hide. You survive. That's law enough for the night." Clara's shoulders sagged. Relief and fear tangled in her chest. I thought no one cared," she whispered. Eli rested a firm hand on her back. "Some do. That's why we fight. That's why we stay." The sheriff mounted again, voice low but firm. "Frontier justice is slow, but it finds those who run and those who wait. You wait smart, Hart, and you fight smart." When he rode off, the dust settling behind him like a fading promise, Clara sank to the floor. Eli knelt beside her, steady, unflinching. "You did good," she said, voice trembling. He shook his head. "No, you did. You survived him. You stayed alive when he wanted to kill more than your body. That's strength." Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it a faint hope. Clara looked at Eli, realizing for the first time that maybe, just maybe, survival wasn't the only thing left to fight for. And for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. Midnight came like a thief, black and heavy, carrying the scent of fire and horses. The cabin shivered under the weight of the storm, windows rattling, the old wood groaning as if warning what was to come. Clara lay on the quilt, heart hammering, ears straining against every creak and whisper. Then the torches appeared. Jed Granger and his gang, shadows dancing in the firelight, approaching with malice in their steps. The air smelled of smoke and brimstone, the kind that made your stomach twist. Eli was already at the doorway, rifle raised, boots firm against the cabin floor. His eyes were cold steel, unyielding. "You won't take her tonight," he growled. Jed laughed, a sound like broken glass. "She's mine, always has been, always will be." The first shots rang out. Horses screamed, wood splintered, and sparks flew as torches struck the cabin walls. Clara's hands shook as she grabbed a small pistol Eli had given her, her knuckles white. Eli's aim was steady. One thug dropped, clutching his shoulder, face contorted in surprise. The others faltered, uncertain. Jed crashed through the door, a brute force of rage and whiskey, grabbing Clara by the hair. "Run won't save you, girl," he snarled. Clara kicked out, her heel catching him in the shin. He stumbled. She twisted, breaking his grip, and Eli lunged, tackling Jed into the splintering floorboards. The fire crept closer, licking the edges of the cabin, smoke curling into their lungs. Clara coughed, clawing at the blankets. Eli's rifle cracked again. Another thug went down. The cabin became a symphony of chaos, screams, gunshots, fire, and the relentless pounding of the desert wind. Clara's chest heaved, her hands ached, her arms bruised, but her spirit burned brighter than the flames consuming the roof. Then, Just as Jed dragged her toward the shadows, a single lantern flared from the old watchtower atop the ridge. Light against darkness, a promise that help had arrived. Jed froze, eyes narrowing. The sound of distant hooves thundered over the ridge, echoing across the canyon. Fear, real fear, finally touched his smirk. Clara stumbled back into Eli's arms, trembling, covered in soot and sweat. The world outside the cabin crackled and burned, but inside her resolve hardened. No longer just a girl bound by rope, no longer a shadow waiting to vanish. She was fighting, and tonight she would not die. The dawn barely touched the horizon when the sound of hooves thundered across the canyon. Sheriff Amos Colton and 2 deputies cut through the morning mist like a blade, rifles slung and eyes hard as flint. The air smelled of smoke and gunpowder, a lingering threat from the night's chaos. Inside the cabin, Clara clutched Eli's arm, her knuckles white. Her body still shook from the fire, the blows, the terror, but there was hope now, sharp and electric. Jed and Howell, his gang, stumbled out of the cabin's remains, coughing and spitting ash, faces twisted with rage. Jed's hand went to his pistol, but it wavered, uncertainty breaking the bravado he wore like armor. "Hands off the girl, Jed," the sheriff's voice boomed, carrying over the canyon like rolling thunder. "It ends here." Jed tried to run, desperation making him clumsy. Clara's heel struck his knee just as he bolted, and he crumpled into the dirt. The sheriff and his deputies were on him in seconds, cuffs clicking, hands firm. "You can tell your lies in court, from behind bars," the sheriff said coldly. Jed's smirk faltered. For the first time, he realized the world had rules he couldn't cheat. The rest of the gang followed, subdued by deputies, stumbling and cursing as their plans unraveled. Clara sank to the ground, chest heaving, eyes wet with relief and exhaustion. Eli slid to the floor beside her, brushing soot and ash from her hair. "You did good," she whispered. "No," he said, voice rough. "You did. You stayed alive. You fought when it would have been easier to give in. That's strength. That's survival. That's more than any lawman can teach." The sheriff knelt briefly, adjusting Jed's cuffs, then stood, scanning the landscape. "Hart, you did right by her. Most men would have turned away. Not you." Outside, the sun broke through the horizon, bleeding gold across the blackened land. The fire's scent still lingered, a reminder of the night's terror, but it no longer carried fear. It carried triumph. Clara looked up at Eli, the smoke rising behind him like a crown of survival. "It's over," she whispered. He nodded slowly, eyes on the horizon. "For now. But never forget how hard you fought to live." The wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it a fragile promise. Justice may come slow, but when it does, it hits like lightning. And in the ruins of fear and fire, they found the first taste of freedom.